Okay, we're recording, I think. You're seeing this from start to finish, quite possibly. I'm going to take the bike off the rear stand now. This is a new rear stand from a company I got called Constands, and it's really quite a good one. What I like about it is that it wheels around like that. I don't know if you can tell, but it wheels really great. Okay, we're off the rear stand. Put my jacket on. I'm going to spare you that part, and we're going to back her out, take for a ride, tell you where I've been. Okay, we're recording. All right, bike's out of the garage, putting on the last steps of the gear here. There goes my postman. He's also a biker. It's fun. You know, bikers have a language and a community that they can share. And he's typical of U.S. type bikers, I guess. He's more of a Harley dude. Okay, it's been a while, so I am going to be caution personified. We're going to watch the dashboard go through its lovely little plie. We are now fired and ready to go. And she starts up. Okay. So, as I say, I'm going to be a little cautious this time around. I've got the chin bar camera on. The reason for my caution is twofold. I haven't done a lot of riding lately. We've been doing a lot of, for fun reasons, we've been doing a lot of vacation type traveling. Hope this comes out. Tony's a little louder than he used to be. We've been doing a lot of vacation type traveling, and the other thing to mention, and a large part of the reason for this little ride here is, succinctly put, yeah, come on guys, don't come out of there. Succinctly put, I crashed. Yes, indeed, I crashed very nicely, and as all crashes go, there's a little ruefulness and a wake-up call that you get from a crash. And I want to share with family and friends the crash, why it happened, and the details, and perhaps maybe there's a little learning that you can take away from it. So I'm going to begin with where it happened. What, why, where, when. We're going to go where. We're going to go what and where. The what was a crash, of course. And it was a Harley Davidson Road Glide, which is a very large machine in comparison to what I normally ride. In fact, according to the spec sheet, it said 860 pounds. This machine weighs about 460 pounds wet, fully fueled and gassed and everything. I'm not sure if the Harley is also a wet weight or if it's a unladen weight. I'm not sure. You know, the manufacturers like to play games with how they post that. Suffice to say, twice the weight, and quite different in control, and more importantly, specific to our story, control layout. So the where was downtown San Diego. My friend had called and invited me to go on a lengthier road trip with them. They were going to ride from San Diego here in Wistful Vistas to a town called Idlewild, which would have been a beautiful ride. Now, I ride sport bikes. They're all on Harleys and the like, and love that quick shifter. And I thought that, and I've often felt that there could be a cruiser in my future, and I thought this might be a time, given that I would be amongst friends and going on a known destination and reroute, that this would be a time to try a cruiser. And I discovered that you could rent them. So indeed, you can rent them from Harley Davidson themselves, although they go for another company name. I'm sure there's liability issues as to why they choose that. But So I found out that you could, and I went, made the appointment, and specifically wanted to try a Road Glide because I was told that that's the smoothest riding and most, well, iconic machine. Let's call it. It's the Harley for getting out on the road and riding. And got to watch the lights here. I went down, signed all the paperwork. I did a few things wrong. I did more than a few things wrong, I think, obviously, because you don't crash unless you do at least a few things wrong. And one of the things I did that was rather wrong was that I waited until rather late in the day to go downtown and start the rental process. This fact put me into downtown traffic at the maximum impact hour. Not a great thing to do. Yeah, no matter how good of a motorcyclist you are, how much experience you have, learning the machine and learning the controls and the layout is one thing, but learning it with the added stressor and potential danger point of hundreds and hundreds of automobiles is just not a good thing to do. You need to do that in a quieter, more open place. So that put me out on the road in the middle of the day. It took a long time to do the paperwork. Net result is I wasn't going out until about 5 p.m. right in the teeth, as I say, of rush hour in San Diego. I did ride it around in the parking lot. I wasn't so crazy as to go right out on the road and start riding right away. I did ride it around on the parking lot because I wanted to get feel for the controls. And one of the first things I discovered as I was riding around on the parking lot was, A, it's a big machine. B, the control layout is quite different. It's a feet forward, butt back riding position. I continuously would be putting my feet down at the midpoint on the machine where normally my controls are located, and there's nothing there. The floorboards, and these are floorboards, are located well forward of where mine would normally be. And that included the shifter. In addition, the shifter is a great big affair. It's got a front lever and a heel lever, or back lever. And I think the correct way to shift it is you shift up with your toe on the front just as you do a normal machine, and you use your heel to downshift on the back. And this was completely unfamiliar to me, and I couldn't find out where neutral was half the time. I actually came pretty near to dropping in the parking lot as I was looking around at neutral and looking around for neutral and trying to find that out. But I didn't, and I rode it around in the parking lot, and at one point a little guy on my shoulder, the good guy on my shoulder, said, "Gary, if you're really smart, you're not going to do this today. This is not the time to take this machine out. This is not the time to go out and learn to ride it. Take it back." Then the other guy on my other shoulder said, "Are you going to go back and tell these people, these rough, tough Harley dudes, that you, the little motorcycle rider, are too afraid to take this out in traffic, and you're actually not going to go out for a ride?" And that guy won out. That guy won out. I don't know if the ladies have that same thing that we men do, but the men do. I think the men will understand with me what that was all about. So I went. I left. Right in the teeth of downtown traffic. Huge, big machine. Unfamiliar with the controls. Relatively unfamiliar with the area. Relatively unfamiliar with the area too. Gotta add that. That's another little mea culpa in there. And my intention was just to ride home. I was just going to ride home and get up the next morning and ride it around in the parking lot. So I got on the road, scared myself really within the first few feet. Had the opportunity to go back, should have done, and then went out on the road, got into a big, large concentration of traffic on a steeply downhill sloped street where you really need your back brake to kind of steady the machine as you're rolling along. You really do need that back brake, particularly on that Harley. At least I felt so anyhow. And was looking for the on-ramp to get me on the freeway to go home, which was not located conventionally on this particular street. Both on-ramps were on one side of the freeway overpass, which is a bit unusual. Looked ahead, and stop and go, trying to fight this big machine. Looking just ahead, saw it, looked down. The driver in front of me, I believe, had stopped well short of where they should have. I say I believe because this is where things happen very quickly, and it's hard to say. I have to take a certain amount of responsibility for this accident, so I can't say, hey, the guy stopped short and that's the reason I crashed. Now, I couldn't assign 100% of that blame. So looked down, the guy was stopped dead in front of me, and again jammed my feet down looking for that rear brake, and the front brake, rear brake not there, front brake there, threw the machine sideways, tossed me over the bars, over the front, and down on the street. While I'm in the air, I'm thinking, the last thing I want this 860-pound machine to do is to fall on me. Do not fall on me. And I lucked out. Didn't fall on me. However, I fell on me. And going over the handlebars, I tried to maintain a grip. It's an automatic thing. This happens very quickly, folks. Maybe guys, gals with a lot of experience, or the MotoGP crew, can really have that fine degree of experience and knowledge where they know to let go and just say, hey, it's over, I'm letting go, I'm going. I didn't. I've crashed several times on all kinds of machines, but I can't say that I did everything as one should do according to oil. And I tried to hang on to the controls, went over the top, scraped up my arm and thumb and little pinky finger on the other side, and landed on my head and on my ankles. Believe it or not, I landed down hard on my ankles. They came over the top of my feet and came down hard. Accident was pretty, it did very little damage to the car, actually. Popped his bumper loose. He had an ancient something, I don't even know what kind of car it was, but it was an old one, and popped his bumper loose. Did a lot of damage to the front of that Harley Davidson, I can tell you that. It smashed the front forks in. It was not rideable. It wasn't rideable. They came from the shop to pick it up. I don't think that fella had $1,500 worth of damage to his machine. To his car. I don't think there was that much damage to his car at the end of the day. Anyway, you know, these things go. So paramedics came. I got treated at the scene. They said, we don't think you've got any broken bones. Do you want to go home? And I said, oh, verily do I want to go home. And they doused me with a little antiseptic and made sure the bones weren't creaking too much, and sent me on my way. So that happened on July 11th of this year, and I was laid up. The next day was when the pain really set in, and I know this from having racing accidents and other types of accidents in the past. You don't get the full flavor of your pain and aches for at least 24 hours after the event. I think adrenaline and the good Lord kicks in that way for us and keeps us somewhat anesthetized. And What did finally start hurting is kind of interesting. The parts that hurt the longest and have taken the longest to heal up have been the parts that didn't hurt right away after the accident. Curiously, I thought that my right arm, which was bloodied up, would be the most worrisome and long-term damage or injury, and it was not. It actually was my ankles. My ankles are still a little bit sore. Weird, rear ankles, and they're still sore. So that's a bit strange. But anyway, that's the most lingering effect I have from that particular accident. Still not 100%. I can jog and I can exercise. I run around and do all that stuff, but they're still tender. They still are tender. My left thumb, still a bit tender. Right pinky, also still a bit tender. Everything else in good shape. Took a gouge out of my Schubert helmet, which would have been my skull. So, at-gat, guys, at-gat. All the gear, all the time. In fact, the boots I was wearing had soft heels, softer heels on them, because I was on a Harley and I wouldn't be in the position, I didn't think I'd be in the rider position that where a sport boot might be able to come into its own. So I had soft heels on them, and I think that may have amplified the damage that I did end up receiving there. So again, at-gat, all the gear all the time, and in the future I'm going to wear hard ankled boots. The machine getting repaired, it's not terminal but not drivable, as I say, after the accident. So in bare bones, that's the what that happened. Now what could I possibly offer to the community by way of my experience that might help you from preventing the experience of a similar type accident? Well, they're relatively basic, and I think that most riders will understand them, but the reason that they're basic is because they're insidious. They get into your skull and you say, I'm not going to take this back. I'm not going to go in and admit that I'm a little bit unready to take this machine out. I've ridden for years. I'm not doing that. And that's nobody's fault but my own. So, A, in order of importance, A, don't ride an unfamiliar machine in heavy traffic. Recipe for problems. Make sure you're familiar with that machine. Make sure that your own competency criteria are satisfied before you go out and ride that machine in heavy traffic. B, if you're riding a newish machine and you're going to be in heavy traffic, or even an oldish machine, even in this machine, this guy right here, and you're in heavy traffic, try to have a minimum familiarity of the area that you'll be riding in, so that you will be able to concentrate more on the safety issues, where you're going, how you're controlling machine, than you are on where it is you need to be going. You don't want to be scanning ahead and to be so involved in trying to find your path that you forget the whole thing about keeping your head on a swivel and looking out for accident points. Next, don't ride in heavy traffic at all if you can help it. I ride totally for pleasure. I ride totally for pleasure. I do not need to commute. There was a time I needed to commute. I had a motorcycle out of economic necessity, and I commuted in heavy traffic, and I learned a lot of lessons. And one of the lessons I learned was it's not fun. It's a job. It's not fun, and it's not your accident that will take you out. It's someone else's accident. So unless it's an economic necessity and you've got to do it, don't ride in heavy traffic. It just isn't not a need to, not a reason to. And the last item I'm going to mention is listen to your inner voice, and don't let the devil guy get into you to do something just because of peer pressure or how something might appear. If you feel that you might have a challenge keeping going on a busy street and in the area that you want to ride in, get off the machine, have a break, go have a cup of coffee, and don't listen to the devil that says, what are you going to do? Are you a wimp? That's what we say in the U.S. Are you a wimp? There are other words we could use, but that's one that we commonly use. And don't listen to that guy. That guy is absolutely only ever going to get you in trouble. So those are my tips. Those are my tips for avoiding problems and learning how to learn a new machine. If you're going to learn a new machine, go to a rider demonstration day. Harley does them, Ducati does them, almost every manufacturer and motorcycle dealer will do them. And they'll take the time and go over with you the setup of the machine. And generally there's a big parking lot, and you'll follow around, and you'll have a guy that's following you to give you tips and things like that. And don't be Mr. Macho and say, hey, I've ridden everything before, I don't need your help. That's BS. That is total BS. All right. Now, having had the accident, what happens to you is that your first time out, you are, the old saying is, once bitten, twice shy. You're scared. Again, I suppose there's guys out there, and I know the GP guys hop back onto motorcycles right after they've gone down at 100 plus miles an hour, and God bless them. Those guys have the experience and they do very well with it. But the ordinary mortal is going to be a little bit tentative about getting back onto a machine and going for a ride. And there's a reason for that. You've just run into something. It hurts. And you don't want to run into anything again. So expect that. Expect that you're going to be a little bit tentative and a little more cautious than normal. Now that's all quite human. I have my turn signal on there. Eeps. So that's the aftermath. And I can tell you I spent a week on my sofa with my foot up on the air off and on because the darn thing hurt. And again, I hopped up right after the accident and thought, oh, my arm hurts, my arm hurts. Arm never hurt anything in comparison to my ankle. So hopped up right after that. Nice V4 torque. Do you see me? Sonny, can you see me? Yes, you can. And you spend a whole week and you run over that accident over and over in your mind, and then first time you get back on a motorcycle, I hopped on the motorcycle and I literally rode around inside of our little controlled living area where we're behind some fences and things like that. The traffic is very light, and I found myself being rather concerned. It's kind of interesting. Like at 20 miles an hour, I'm thinking, whoa! So just know that that's kind of natural. And you can't stay vegetative forever. You got to get back out on that machine and go again. You cannot give up, because the longer you stay away, the more poignant, the more pointed that experience becomes of getting back on that machine and riding again. I'm telling you. You think, oh dear. And you see every car as a potential threat. And they are. Of course they actually are. But you see each one of them, though, is just tantamount to putting the hurt on you. And you got to get past that. You got to get past that. You can't completely ride scared to death. You've got to ride with a little bit of aggression, because if you are a scaredy cat, people are going to be running over the top of you the whole time, and that probably means you're actually less safe of a driver than if you ride with just that little bit of aggression. After all, we know that motorcycles work via some gyroscopic force. They like to stay upright, and the slower you go, the more, actually, interestingly, the more unstable they are. And this is true in corners as well, to a point. You can overdo that, so to a point. Anyhow, got over that mostly. I'm not 100% over yet. It's a month later, and I have to say I still am a little bit on the tentative side. So it's probably a wise thing. It's probably a wise thing that something comes along to us every once in a while, baps us upside the head or some other sensitive part and says, pay attention. You've taken this for granted. You've come to take this for granted. Now, the other thing, I know people are going to say, and I get this comment about my friends that ride Harleys versus my friends that ride sport bikes, and talking about sport bikes. And people say, well, Harleys, what do you expect? You can't corner them. They don't turn. They're up. Guess what? That was one magnificent machine. That thing was so well engineered. It's so solid. That thing, if I could get it out of downtown San Diego, which is an if, I think you could probably ride that thing. You could qualify for what's euphemistically termed the Iron Butt Contest, and that's a group of people that ride motorcycles. I think you need to do 1,000 miles in a day. I think you need to do 1,000 miles in a day. So that's a magnificent machine. The motorcycle had nothing to do with my accident, and I want to get that out there right away. I have respect for Harley. I have respect for the designs. I feel that thing was very solid, very strongly built, and that everything that happened, I had a hand in. In fact, really, I could say that the motorcycle didn't have anything to do with it. It was me learning the motorcycle. Nope, looks like my phone battery is low, and I have the plug-in for it, and I've got the little thing hanging there for the plug-in, but I didn't bring it with me. Nice. So the phone may die before we get back. Anyway, this is a quick ride. Turns out it'll probably be 20 minutes or so. Quick ride and a little bit of an explanation to my family and friends about where I've been and why they haven't seen me on a machine for a while, and a little bit of an explanation for that, plus hopefully, and I think I need to turn around here. So it's official, I'm lost. There is nobody around here. Hopefully somebody that listened to all that will get some use out of it. I can just go back. I like the way going back. So somebody will get some use out of it, and perhaps do a little thinking on their own and avoid their own circumstance and get off and crash. And that would give, just the thought of that being possible would give me a lot of pleasure in passing this message along. So there you have it. Ride safe, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, you are responsible for yourself and your own decisions. Keep that in mind. Be cool, and as I say, ride safe.